start with an uncomfortable truth, because honesty is the only way this conversation helps anyone. Right now, millions of young men between the ages of 18 and 35 are silently worried about their penis. Not just about size, but about firmness, stamina, confidence, and whether their body is somehow failing them. Most don't talk about it openly. They scroll, they compare, they overthink, and they carry that anxiety into relationships, bedrooms, and even daily life. When they finally gather the courage to ask a doctor, they're often told, "You're normal, there's nothing wrong." While that statement is usually meant to reassure, it often leaves men feeling dismissed rather than informed. The real issue isn't that doctors are careless. The issue is that modern sexual health problems in young men are more complex than a 5-minute appointment allows. The conversation stops too early, and what gets ignored can grow into something far more serious later on. Here's why this matters more than most people realize. The penis is not just a sexual organ, it's a vascular organ. Its performance depends almost entirely on healthy blood flow. When blood flow is strong, erections are firm, reliable, and confident. When blood flow weakens, sexual performance is often the first system in the body to show warning signs. That's why sexual difficulties in young men are not just about sex. They can be early indicators of future cardiovascular disease, metabolic issues, and chronic inflammation. Studies now show that nearly 1 in 3 men under 35 report some form of erectile difficulty, whether it's trouble maintaining firmness, inconsistent performance, or anxiety that interferes with arousal. 20 years ago, that number was far lower. Something has changed, and it's not genetics. The modern lifestyle plays a major role. Highly processed foods, excess sugar, chronic stress, lack of sleep, constant screen exposure, and unrealistic sexual expectations driven by pornography all place pressure on the body's vascular system. Over time, these factors damage the lining of blood vessels, a condition medically known as endothelial dysfunction. This damage doesn't happen overnight. It develops quietly, often starting in the late teens and early 20s. Because the penis requires rapid and strong blood flow, it becomes one of the earliest places where this damage shows up. That's why young men can feel too young to have sexual problems and still experience them anyway. The body doesn't operate on social expectations. It responds to biology. One of the most harmful myths young men believe is that penis size alone determines sexual success or masculinity. This belief creates unnecessary shame and distraction from the real issue. Medical research consistently shows that erection quality, not static size, is what most strongly influences sexual satisfaction for both partners. Poor blood flow can reduce erection volume by 30% or more, even when anatomical size is completely average. That means a man can be biologically normal and still feel inadequate, simply because his circulation is compromised. Another myth is that blood flow problems only affect older men. In reality, vascular damage can begin 10 to 15 years before serious symptoms appear. By the time erectile dysfunction becomes persistent, the underlying damage has often been present for years. Doctors who specialize in male sexual health see this pattern repeatedly. A 24-year-old convinced he is too small turns out to have poor circulation linked to diet and stress. A 29-year-old who exercises regularly but sleeps poorly and consumes large amounts of processed food experiences weaker erections than men twice his age. These cases are not rare anymore. They're becoming common. And the emotional impact is significant. Sexual anxiety doesn't stay in the bedroom. It affects confidence, dating behavior, emotional connection, and mental health. Men begin to avoid intimacy, doubt themselves, or feel broken when they are not. This is where fear becomes useful, not paralyzing. Fear is meant to signal that something needs attention. Ignoring these early signs doesn't protect you. It delays solutions and increases future risk. When circulation problems are left unaddressed in your 20s, they can progress into erectile dysfunction, fertility challenges, and chronic health conditions in your 30s and 40s. That path often leads to long-term medication use, medical expenses, and emotional strain that could have been prevented. Understanding what's happening now gives you control, and control is where this story starts to change.
To move from fear to clarity, we need to talk about how the body actually works, without exaggeration or false promises. An erection is a hydraulic event. During sexual arousal, signals from the brain trigger the release of nitric oxide in the blood vessels supplying the penis. Nitric oxide tells those vessels to relax and widen, allowing blood to rush into sponge-like tissue known as the corpora cavernosa. As these chambers fill, pressure builds. Veins are compressed and blood is trapped inside, creating firmness. When this system functions properly, erections feel strong and stable. When it doesn't, erections can feel weak, inconsistent, or short-lived. The health of this process depends on the endothelium, the inner lining of blood vessels. A healthy endothelium responds quickly to nitric oxide and allows vessels to expand efficiently. An unhealthy endothelium becomes stiff and unresponsive. This stiffness reduces blood flow, even when desire and arousal are present. Endothelial dysfunction is influenced by inflammation, oxidative stress, insulin resistance, and hormonal imbalance. These factors are increasingly common in young adults due to dietary patterns, stress levels, and environmental exposure. The body doesn't differentiate between sexual blood vessels and cardiac blood vessels. Damage affects the entire system. Research published in urology and cardiovascular journals consistently shows a strong connection between erectile health and overall vascular health. In many cases, erectile difficulties appear years before heart disease symptoms. That's why sexual health is often described as a window into cardiovascular health. When doctors evaluate young men with performance issues, they frequently find markers of early vascular aging. This doesn't mean irreversible damage has occurred. It means the body is sending an early warning. The earlier that warning is understood, the easier it is to correct course. Another critical factor is nitric oxide availability. Nitric oxide is not stored in large quantities. The body must produce it continuously, and production depends on nutrition, oxygen availability, and enzyme function. Diets low in nitrate-rich foods, antioxidants, and essential minerals reduce nitric oxide production. At the same time, high sugar intake and chronic stress increase molecules that degrade nitric oxide before it can do its job. This creates a bottleneck in the erection process. Desire may still exist, but the physical response lags behind, creating frustration and self-doubt. Pornography adds another layer to this issue. Frequent exposure to highly stimulating content can desensitize dopamine pathways in the brain, making real-life arousal less responsive. This doesn't mean porn is inherently harmful, but excessive use combined with poor vascular health creates a perfect storm. The brain expects extreme stimulation, while the body struggles to deliver a physical response. This mismatch fuels performance anxiety, which further interferes with nitric oxide release. The result is a cycle that feels psychological, but is rooted in biology. Understanding these mechanisms builds trust because it removes mystery and blame. Nothing here suggests weakness or failure. These are predictable physiological responses to modern conditions. The good news is that blood vessels are dynamic. They respond to changes in diet, activity, sleep, and stress management. Unlike nerve damage or structural abnormalities, vascular health can improve relatively quickly when supported correctly. That's why focusing on blood flow is not a gimmick. It's a medically sound strategy supported by decades of research. Doctors who specialize in sexual medicine emphasize this point repeatedly. They see young men regain confidence in performance not through surgery or extreme interventions, but through targeted lifestyle changes that restore vascular function. This doesn't mean instant results or unrealistic expectations. It means measurable improvement over weeks and months. When the science is understood, the solution stops feeling mysterious and starts feeling manageable. And that's where hope begins to replace fear.
Now let's talk about the part most people are waiting for, because knowledge without action doesn't change outcomes.
One of the most studied and accessible ways to support nitric oxide production and improve blood flow is through diet, specifically foods rich in natural nitrates. Among these, beetroot stands out. This isn't a trend or a supplement gimmick. Beetroot has been studied extensively in the context of blood pressure, exercise performance, and vascular health. The reason it matters for sexual health is simple. Dietary nitrates from beetroot are converted by the body into nitric oxide through a well-documented biochemical pathway. This pathway bypasses some of the limitations that occur when nitric oxide production is impaired. Clinical studies have shown that beetroot consumption can improve blood flow efficiency by as much as 40 to 47% in certain populations. Some effects appear within hours, while others develop with consistent use over weeks. For sexual health, this translates into improved erection firmness, better endurance, and more reliable performance. It's important to be clear about expectations. Beetroot does not permanently increase anatomical penis size. What it does is help the penis function closer to its full physiological potential. Many men interpret this functional improvement as a size change because erections become fuller and more complete. Using beetroot effectively doesn't require extreme measures. One medium-sized beetroot, boiled or roasted, consumed 3 to 4 times per week is sufficient for most people. Alternatively, 150 to 200 milliliters of fresh beetroot juice without added sugar can be used, ideally 2 to 3 hours before physical or sexual activity. Timing matters because nitric oxide levels rise after digestion and absorption. Consistency matters more than intensity. This is not a one-time fix, it's a supportive habit. Diet alone is not the entire picture, but it's a powerful foundation. Hydration supports blood volume and circulation. Adequate sleep regulates hormones involved in arousal and recovery. Reducing ultra-processed foods lowers inflammation that damages blood vessels. Managing stress reduces cortisol, which interferes with nitric oxide signaling. Moderating porn consumption allows the brain's reward system to reset and respond more naturally to real-life intimacy. None of these changes require perfection. They require intention. What makes this approach empowering is that it shifts focus away from comparison and toward function. Instead of asking, "Am I big enough?" the question becomes, "Is my body healthy enough to perform well?" That shift alone reduces anxiety. When men understand that performance is influenced by blood flow, lifestyle, and vascular health, shame begins to fade. Confidence grows, not from denial, but from informed action. This is why so many men report improvements not only in sexual performance, but in energy, mood, and overall well-being when they support their circulation. Medical professionals support this approach because it aligns with preventative health principles. Improving vascular health reduces the risk of future cardiovascular disease, metabolic disorders, and chronic inflammation. Sexual health improvements are often the most noticeable benefit, but they are part of a larger picture. When the body functions better, confidence follows naturally. This is not about chasing perfection. It's about removing obstacles that prevent the body from doing what it's designed to do.
At this point, the most important message to understand is that sexual health is not something that suddenly disappears one day. It reflects patterns built over time. The choices you make in your late teens and 20s shape how your body functions in your 30s and 40s. That reality can feel intimidating, but it's also empowering. It means you have influence. You are not stuck with the outcome of genetics or past mistakes. The body is adaptable, especially when supported early. Taking sexual health seriously is not about obsession or fear. It's about responsibility. Ignoring early warning signs doesn't make them go away. It pushes them into the future, where solutions become more expensive, more invasive, and more emotionally taxing. Addressing them now often means simple adjustments rather than complex treatments later. That's the difference between prevention and repair. Prevention preserves independence, confidence, and quality of life. There is also an emotional component that deserves attention. Many young men carry silent shame about their bodies. They compare themselves to unrealistic standards and assume something is wrong with them. That shame thrives in isolation. Accurate information breaks that cycle. When you understand that blood flow, not size, is often the real issue, self-blame loses its power. When you see improvement through simple, evidence-based changes, trust in your body begins to return. That trust changes how you show up in relationships, conversations, and daily life. This is why education matters. Sexual health education often focuses on risk avoidance, not functional well-being. It talks about infections and pregnancy, but rarely about confidence, circulation, and long-term performance. Filling that gap helps people make informed decisions instead of reactive ones. It encourages proactive care rather than crisis management, and it reminds men that seeking information is a sign of strength, not weakness. If you've followed this entire conversation, you've already taken a meaningful step. Awareness precedes change. From here, the next steps are practical. Support your circulation. Eat foods that help your blood vessels do their job. Sleep enough to allow recovery. Manage stress instead of letting it accumulate silently. Pay attention to how your body responds over time. Improvement is often gradual, but it is real. Each small change compounds. If this message resonated with you, engage with it. Liking and subscribing isn't just about supporting a channel. It helps accurate information reach people who need it but don't know where to look. If you have questions or concerns, share them. Thoughtful discussion reduces stigma and spreads understanding. Sexual health is part of overall health. Treating it with respect benefits not only individuals, but relationships and communities as well. The most hopeful truth in all of this is simple. Your body is not working against you. It responds to how you treat it. When you provide the right conditions, it adapts. Confidence returns not through comparison, but through competence. Performance improves not through pressure, but through support. And the future becomes something you shape, not something you fear.